Hey, Preacher Girls and friends who are watching the Preacher Girl podcast. Hello and welcome to How to Declutter Your Mind. This is how I declutter my mind, and I hope that these short tips will be so good for you. They're easy to implement. You can do them right away. You might say, well, what's the use? Why does your mind need to be decluttered? Well, think of your mind as a room. Some of us have a big room and some of us have a small room. And if that room is full of things, just everything you can think about, junk, but also useful stuff, important papers, all your old Atari games, all your old DS games, and everything from your PS1, 2, 3, and everything else is all shoved in that room, all your old shoes, and everything you can think about, old furniture, old sheets and blankets and clothes, and you just keep stuffing stuff into that room. Eventually, you're gonna run out of space. You won't know where to find anything, and then when you go up there, it's gonna wear you out just trying to put your hands on one thing that you're looking for. Have you ever been trying to remember something or think about something, and for the life of you, it's the simplest thing, but you cannot remember? It's because in the room that is your mind, it's there. You know it's there. You know the answer. You just can't put your finger on it because there's so much other stuff going on and cluttering your mind that you can't think clearly. So today we want to look at how to bring clarity back to your thought life, how to declutter your mind, how to keep the things that you want to keep and lose the things that you don't. It's an exciting thing and it will help you navigate your year and make sure that you make the best of every single day. So if you're ready, let's go. If you have known me for any length of time, if you've known me for a year or known me for 20 years, the one thing you hear me say over and over and over and over again is write it down. There's nothing else, no single piece of advice outside of the Word of God, and even that is in the Word of God, that I have gotten in my life that has made a bigger difference. Sometimes I remember something, I get an idea, I think of something on the road and I don't write it down, sure that I would remember it later, and I guarantee you I don't remember it. 9 times out of 10, it will never come back to your memory, and many of us lose pearls, we lose advice, we lose very important life-changing information and ideas, sometimes deposited by our subconscious and sometimes maybe by God himself, but we lose them because we fail to write it down. So the first thing I want to advise you to do if you are trying to declutter your mind is to keep a journal. I don't know what yours looks like. I know we've had Wilmari on the podcast before talking about organizing. I know you guys are planners. Most of you have one. I have one too. But a journal or a planner is the best way to make sure that you write stuff down. Now, I have different books for different things. I have the one notebook where I just jot down random thoughts or things that some of you use Google Keep, some of you use Memo on your iOS. I don't know what it is that you use, but when you get an idea or a thought, just go ahead and write that down. You may or may not ever go back to it, but this is what writing it does. When you write something down, you take it out of your mind space. So you no longer have to focus on that thing. It doesn't demand any attention from you because once you put it on paper, your mind releases it. And that clears up that space in your head for something else until you go back to that thing later. So I have that one notebook that I just jot little random things on. And then I have my journaling book, which I write my thanks, my gratitudes, my worries, my stresses, my problems and relationships, or my own walk with God or whatever. I write that every night. And then I have my sermon book, which I write stuff down in, my ideas, my thoughts, my Bible study, which in the next podcast is going to teach you all about how to study the Bible. It's going to be great. So stay tuned for that next week. So if you don't have that yet, and let me tell you something, don't go out and buy a $20 journal. You don't even have to buy a PG journal. If you have one, hooray. If you want one, check the store. But if you don't have one, any random piece of paper that you can keep is the best way to get something written down. So we talked about your mind being like a room, and since I don't have a room like that at my disposal, look at this box. So I'll hold it up a little bit so you can see it, right? So there's a box here and it's just chock full of stuff. So pretend like this is your mind, and all of these things are the thoughts, the ideas, the stresses, the worries, the obligations, responsibilities, things you saw on TV, songs you know, people you've met, names you try to remember, stuff you learned in high school, stuff you learned. It's all in your mind. Somewhere inside of your brain, all of this stuff is stored. Your brain is a supercomputer. It is better than any supercomputer in the world, and it has all of this information. How are you going to access the one piece of information that you need? This is what decluttering will do. It will help you make sense of all of this. Because some of us, we want to think about things that are important. The Bible says think about things that are pure and lovely and of a good report. But instead, all we can think about are bills. Bills that we can't pay. Bills that are stacking up and in arrears. We want to think about what we want to do for the kingdom, but we can't. We can't even get to it because we're just bombarded by ideas. We can't ever focus on one because we've got too many. Decluttering will help you compartmentalize, clear up your mind, and free up your mind so you can be a better steward of the ideas that God has given you. So the first one was get a journal. The second one, I like to call it pick a spot. And by pick a spot, I mean figure out which part of your brain that you're going to deal with now and deal with it. Let me give you an example. Have you ever tried to clean your kitchen, right, girl? And like me, I want to start where it's visible. So I decide I'm going to start in my pantry. And so I start emptying everything from the top shelf, then the second shelf, then the first shelf, and putting it on top of the island, and because I want to empty it and start with a clean slate. But halfway during the emptying, I figure out, wait a minute, since I'm making all this trash, I better run over to the fridge, and I start emptying the fridge. And then while I'm emptying the fridge, I pick up some pots and pans that need to be put in the sink. So I start filling up the sink, and then I was like, wait, all these pots, I should rearrange the pots. Hours later, you look at my kitchen and it's no cleaner, it's no more decluttered, and it's no more organized than it was when I started. In fact, it looks a million times worse. But if I decided today, just the pantry, nothing else, just the pantry. Even if my brain keeps calling and saying the fridge needs your attention, I'm just gonna focus on the pantry for 1 hour. That's why I say pick a spot. You gotta stop the multitasking so you can get on with one thing. Pick that thing in your brain that's of importance, that's a priority, that's urgent in your life, and do that. And leave all the other nagging things for a minute. Give yourself an allotted amount of time and pick your spot. 3, if you want to declutter your mind, I need you to lean in and listen. Lean in and listen. You've got to take inventory of your information intake. It is so important that if you want to declutter and make sure that your mind is in a place where God can speak to you, where ideas can flow freely, where you think with clarity, then you've got to stop filling it up with trash. What you watch on social media, how much time you spend on it, what you watch on Netflix, what you watch on Instagram, what you're listening to, all of those things are picking up space in your brain. Your brain has something that I guess you can liken it to RAM, right? Random access memory, and then it has a hard drive. So some stuff is right there for your grasp. You can get it easily, you can access it real quick, and then some stuff goes in for the long haul. You know, like that one raunchy song you learned when you were 14 that you haven't forgotten and you're 40? Right, well that got stored in your hard drive. It is useless information that's picking up space that God could use. So you've got to be careful. You don't have to read every news media out there. You don't have to watch every new movie. Just because it's out, it doesn't mean you have to keep filling your brain with garbage. You gotta be able to censor and take inventory of the things that you're putting in your mind. And I know sometimes a little mindless recreation or whatever it is you're watching a comedy for is good, but don't let that be everything you put in. If you spend an hour or an hour and a half watching a movie, do you know that you've already wasted 1/12 of your daylight hours on nothing? On nothing. And unless God has spoken to you through that, or you found a ridiculously good business idea, you could have been doing something that was more productive and better suited for your mind space at this time. Because I guess it all comes down to this one really important thing that I really want you to get. Today, this day that we're talking to each other in right now, that is your masterpiece day. Today, it's not next week, because I don't know a single person in my life who put things off inevitably and continuously that achieved anything. Today is the best day you ever had. Today, this one, it can be the one where everything completely changes in your life. It doesn't have to be down the road and tomorrow, because intentions are noble, but they're never worth $1. They're never worth anything unless something is done. Today was a day, that was the day Michelangelo put his paintbrush on a canvas. It was the day that Leonardo, it was the day, today is the day that you begin the best thing you've ever done. But if you don't see it that way, and you waste it, and you fill your mind with garbage, and you lay down in your bed and let the hours pass you by, pining and moaning and being depressed about what could have been, then you've wasted the best gift that God has given you. So declutter your mind today. Make sure that you invest in what goes in as much as what comes out. A really, really good way to declutter your mind, and the fourth one I'm going to give you, is to test your ideas with people. Many of us are entrepreneurial, or we're ideation people. That means we come up with great ideas 50 times a day. If you are that kind of person, then that could be your weakness and not your strength, because having 50 ideas and 0 implemented is worse than having no ideas at all. So the best way to declutter your mind is to take an idea from your brain. Say like you want to learn how to knit, and you have a great idea for knitting. The best way is to take that idea and share it with somebody who knows what they're doing. Somebody, share it with friends, share it with people who don't know. A varied amount and a different demographic. Bounce your ideas off of those people and get some real feedback. You don't want it, you're gonna get mad, you're gonna get offended when they don't agree with you because you feel like you got it all figured out. But the smartest people in the whole wide world know that's the best way to test an idea is to tell people. And when you tell people, you don't want to just tell the people who say yes, 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 yes all the time. You want to tell the people who will give you the no's sometimes and give you things that will challenge you and cause you to test it, break it. The strongest metals in the world have been tested and pre-tested and post-tested for tensile strength, and they've been strengthened with alloys because just in their raw form, they're no good. Same thing with ideas. If you just take it all by yourself, be a Lone Ranger, it's gonna die just the way it started, because God said we can't do this together. Strength is supplied at joints. We can't do it alone. We have to do it together. So that way, if you have 50 ideas and you take one and you say, hey, I gotta bounce something off of you. You're an author. I have an idea for a book. What do you think? And then ask somebody else. Ask a few people. And if you get positive feedback, then run with it. If you get negative feedback, try to change it. Ask questions. Say, why do you think that's a bad idea? What about this? Would this help that idea? And that way, you don't end up making some scary invention that nobody will ever buy, and it will cost you a lot of money. So test your idea on people. All right. To close the podcast today, I want to give you a really practical way right now. I do it all the time. I've trained people who write books to do it. I've taught people in multiple classes since I was a teenager to do it, and I'm going to show you how to do it. For authors, I call it a brain dump. In literature, they call it a stream of consciousness journaling. I don't know about all that stream of consciousness stuff. I don't know if you want to call it that, but Virginia Woolf, the famous American author, used to call it automatic writing. I'm not suggesting that, but this really works for mind declutter, and I want to show you how it's done. You start with a pen and a blank piece of paper, and without thinking, without editing, without trying, without speaking, just begin to write down whatever comes to your mind. Whatever it looks like, just write the thoughts. Don't edit. I know it's difficult, even if they make no sense, and you just write it. It can be sentences, it could be one word, it could be phrases, but write and write and write. Just take everything that pops into your mind and write it down. And I'm not saying, you write, why is the sky blue? You're not trying to answer the questions of the world right now. You are just trying to empty what is immediately at the forefront of your consciousness. You just put it on paper, just put it down, dump it all out. Let me tell you something, 5 minutes of that, without judgment, without editing, without censoring, just put it on the paper. 5 minutes of just brain dumping on your paper is the equivalent of emptying your whole refrigerator. Every single one of you knows that if you're sitting in a cluttered space, it's difficult to think clearly. If you're sitting in an office that's just crunchy with mess, it's hard to focus, because a clean outside space lends itself to a clean mind. And in the same way, when you empty your brain, when you empty your mind, at least the things at the forefront on paper, even if you do this before you pray, I believe that you give the Lord an opportunity to work with a clean slate. To say, Father, I have nothing right now that stands in the way. No debt, no kids, no school, no work, no liabilities, no obligation, nothing that's going to stand in the way of you speaking to me. It is the main reason why you declutter your mind, so that you can adequately and effectively hear the voice of your Abba. So you do your brain dump, take a picture. You can do it from far, you can blur it out so we don't get to see what it is you write, and post it on the community so we can see it. It's so fun. Some of you do it in color, some of you do it in postcards, some of you do it in index cards. It doesn't matter, but as long as you get that stuff out, I guarantee you it frees you up, it makes your head feel lighter. And if you like this podcast, please click the like button below, subscribe if you have not done so already, and I'll see you next time on the PG Podcast. Remember, if God called you, then no one can uncall you.